In this video, we're going to walk through the authoring experience in QuickSight. So as an author user, you are able to create new data sets, to create new analyses, and also publish dashboards. So first you see that I'm logged in and this is my home screen as logging in as an author. So it's going to default you to showing your All Analyses tab. You also have a section to see any dashboards that either you have created or someone else has created and shared with you. An area where you can mark things and see them in your favorites. Very easy to mark something as a favorite. You just put either the star next to it or remove it, and then that will add it or remove it from your favorites. We have a set of tutorial videos that are more focused on the author type persona that you can get started with here. Lots more on the YouTube site and our QuickSight's YouTube channel, as well as in our documentation, but there's some first to get started. As you click on your username, I am actually logged in right now as an admin user, but the only difference is that I see this Manage QuickSight, which you will not see as an author, but everything else will be the same here. A link to the community where you can either post questions or answer others' questions or even post new ideas for new features. So that'll link you out to our community page. An area where you can send feedback on the product. You can switch the UI into 9 different languages today, as well as we have 5 more that are coming on the very near-term roadmap. I think it might be 10 today, plus 5 more. And this will bring you to our online documentation. So that's just a little bit around the UI here. Now, let's walk through an example of creating something completely from scratch. So I'm going to say that I want to create a new analysis, and then I'm going to be presented with any data sets that either I've created or that others have created and shared with me. So these 4 here are just some samples that come with QuickSight, and these 2 are something that someone else created and they shared these with me. So I could start from one of these, excuse me, and then make a new analysis from one of these existing data sets. So on this particular one, I've been shared as a user on this, but not an owner. So I don't see the edit data set or schedule refreshes or anything like that. But as a user, I can create new analysis from this. But let's actually go create a new data set so we can see how that experience looks like. So here you see the screen with all the supported data sources that QuickSight can connect to today. Everything from just uploading a flat file like a CSV or an Excel file or a JSON file to connecting to relational databases like Redshift and Snowflake and SQL Server and others, Aurora, RDS. Some application connectors like pulling data directly from Salesforce or Twitter or Jira. So essentially all the supported connectors on the top, and then any data sources you've already set up on the bottom or someone else has set up or shared with you. So a data source is basically just connection information. So here I have a data source which points to a Redshift instance. This happens to be inside a VPC. So I've chosen my VPC connection here rather than going over a public network to that. And just the database credentials that you'd like to use. So from here, you can, this is a shareable object even. You could share a data source so that others can create new data sets and they'll share those same credentials. Or you can just kind of use it as a preset and then create new data sets directly from that. So I'm going to use this existing data source and choose one of my schemas here, and then choose a table within that schema. You can also have a shortcut to use custom SQL if you'd like, or you can edit and preview the data. So this is going to bring up our data preparation screen. This is totally optional. You can skip this if you'd like. But if you do want to do things like join tables together, you can click this Add Data button here and select a table that you'd like to join. If you click on that, those circles there, you can now define a join clause. Type of join here. If you need to add new additional join clauses, you can add more. So we won't go completely into all the detailed features in data prep. We have a great data prep video specifically that's on our YouTube channel. So I'm just going to remove this for now, but not only can you add tables from the same source, but you can even add tables from different sources. So if I wanted to start with some tables from Redshift and then join in some data from, S3, maybe not the best example because you can use Redshift Spectrum to query data in S3, but say I want to join some data from Snowflake or from a SQL Server or Salesforce, I could do so. Or I could even just upload a flat file to join to that. the joins happen exactly the same way. It's just that you're joining across multiple different sources now. So last couple things in data prep is you can add calculated columns. So the fields you'll be adding here are today they're at a row level type basis, so that you don't see any aggregate functions here in the data prep. We can add aggregate level calculations, but we'll do that in the analysis. But if you want to pre-calculate something and kind of materialize it into your data set, this is a great place to add those calculations. You can even augment your data with models, custom models from using machine learning that you've created in SageMaker. You can add filters here on the bottom. These are filters that are built into the data set itself. And change between using Spice or direct query. So direct query would be like a live connection to your database. It's great if the database can support fast performance, or if you need real-time data. Otherwise, I would recommend importing the data into Spice. That's our in-memory engine inside of QuickSight. You get really good performance with Spice. You can schedule the data to refresh on whatever interval you'd like, but generally you do it for performance, and it's also really good for high concurrency use cases. So, I won't go through everything else in here. We're just going to say I'm happy with this table, and we'll move to save and visualize. So now here I've got my blank canvas. I've got some visual types that I can choose from down here. I've got my fields from my data set and some other menus that I can choose from. So first, let's just start with something simple. I want to look at the total quantity of data, and here's just telling me that the data finished importing to Spice. So we're good. So I'm going to look at the total quantity and see that over time. So I have this set to autograph right now, so it's just trying to pick an appropriate visual type based on the fields that I selected. If I added another field like segment into this, it's going to put that on the color, make me different sets of colored lines. So you can drag and drop fields, or you can just click on them and it'll find a good place. If you click and expand or collapse this field wells area, you have a little more control rather than just clicking on a field. So for instance, maybe I want to roll this up to a monthly level. Maybe I want to add a forecast to this. So using this menu, I can add forecasting. So here I'm forecasting those values forward. You can even forecast them backwards, which is kind of neat. So this is like pretending like these 4 values didn't exist, and it's showing what QuickSight would have forecasted those to be, and I could see how closely they match up with the data. Just kind of a nice way to check if you want to trust the forecast, basically. So you can resize visuals by grabbing the bottom corner here. If you want to add another visual, just click on this plus button and add another one. So on this one, maybe we show like a KPI here. So I'm going to specifically tell QuickSight I want to make a KPI, and we'll look at our period over period quantity number. So by default, it's going to show you day over day, but you can roll it up and again, like a month over month, or we could do year over year. So it's automatically going to take the 2 most recent values, and I could resize that, move it up over here. Let's add another visual. On this one, maybe we'll do a categorical analysis. We'll build a quick donut chart, and we'll break that down by industry. So here I can see my quantity broken by industry. If you want to add drill downs, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but one way is you can just drag fields beneath one another and it'll set a drill down. So here if I take a segment field and drag it just below my industry field, so still within that box but below the other field, see how my hover over said add a drill down layer. So the chart doesn't look any different right now, except it added this button where I can drill down on everything but on the second level and drill back up, or I could select one of the slices here and I can drill down specifically on that slice. So this is going to filter on tech and then break it down into the segments within tech. So that adds basically a filter and drills down, versus if you just click the arrow, it drills down on all of the slices. So pretty much all visual types support that. The table specifically does not, but most of the other ones do. So that's just one way of doing drill downs. Let's add maybe a table to this as well. So I'm going to add another visual, and I'm going to tell QuickSight I want to make a table. There's also a pivot table, which would show you more summarized data. So for instance, like maybe we start with segment, and then I want to show the industries within those, and then I want to show, say, let's do some years across the top. And we'll put a sales metric in. So here, with pivot tables, you specifically get this expand and collapse functionality automatically. And if you click on the header, you can either collapse or expand that whole column. So that's how pivot tables work. And of course you can add subtotals and totals to this as well. So here I'll add subtotals and totals for my rows. Um, if I change this into a regular table, it looks more kind of like a spreadsheet layout. So it's more a list type of format. I might add more details to this. So maybe I want to go down to every individual transaction level, see who the customer was, what product they purchased, throw a couple other numbers in here. And let's reorganize my dashboard a little bit here. So recently we made some changes to the sizing of visuals in QuickSight. So you'll notice that there's a lot more breakpoints in the grid. There used to be 12 steps left and right across the dashboard that it would snap to. There's now 36 steps, so you can get a lot more customized sizes. You can also make a lot smaller visuals. So notice as I make this line chart really small, it's actually smart enough to hide axes once it gets to a certain size. So you can create these kind of spark line type effect if you'd like. But specifically on things like insights, insights are great. These are suggested insights where I can, or QuickSight's actually already scanned a bunch of the data I'm looking at and found some interesting things. So here in my month over month, it found the most recent change was it was up, 1/3%, or telling me what the forecast is going to be for February next year. I found an anomaly in the data. Here it's showing me my top 3 industries. So nonetheless, these are some suggested insights, which are great. Um, and I'll add one of these. And where I was going with that is that you can make them a lot smaller now. So, we're using one of the suggested insights, but if you come in here and customize the narrative, maybe you just want to put a text description and not use a lot of this fancy calculations and stuff in here. You could delete everything in here and just maybe put a little explanation, or even just insert an image for like a logo if you'd like. And you could always do that. Inserting the logo is probably within the last month or so. Um, but the smallest you could make one of these insights was still about that tall, probably. So just the new resizing can make these a lot smaller, is my point. So let's grab this. Let's put this, maybe right up there. And let's make our table stretch across. And let's build some interactivity into this now. All right. So a very common type of interactivity you might want to do is to have the visuals kind of filter between one another. So this actions menu is a great place to do that. This is basically a shortcut, this quick create, where if I have this visual selected and I say filter the visuals on the same sheet, now when I make a selection here, now I know this insight is now going to say I only have one value. I can't do a period over period comparison, so just ignore that for now. But everything else has filtered to just the month that I selected. So November 2017, I see that here in my KPI. All the values here, November 2017, and same thing in my table. We're looking at years, but let me show the actual full date, and we'll see everything will be from November. Now I could also turn other visuals on as filter actions too. So here I'm going to do this on my donut chart as well. So if I click the energy industry, now everything down here is still filtered to November and also now filtered to energy too. So they do cascade across one another. And that behavior is new also within the last month. So around the beginning of April is when this cascading behavior kicked in. So previously, you could turn many things on with actions, but whenever you clicked in something on one and then you clicked on something in the other, it would reset your selection for the first one. So now you can have as many turned on as you want, and they'll all cascade and kind of uh, be additive in terms of filtering. So in my table here, let's just add a couple more fields so we take up some more of the space here. And then maybe I want to apply some conditional formatting to this. So within this menu, I can apply conditional formatting. This was new in about November of 2019, so the end of last year. So here I can choose what column I want to apply it to. For instance, maybe we'll start with the sales column. And I can either add a background color or change the text color or add an icon or all three of them or a combination of two of them. You can choose as many as you'd like. Maybe we'll do a background color. I can choose between solid colors or a gradient. I could format based on the same field, or maybe I had like a year over year calculation and I want to base it on a year over year. You can base it on a completely different column than when you're actually displaying, which is kind of cool. And here's where I set my conditions. So let's say if it was greater than 20K, then let's make it green. Add another condition. If it was greater than 10K, let's make it yellow. And if it was less than or equal to 500, we'll go red. So you can see how you can very easily add these conditions. Once I apply, we'll see these start to pop up over here. If I wanted to highlight even, you can do in a table, I could highlight a whole row. For use cases for that might be like if I want to highlight our company in relation to everyone else and kind of show it as a benchmark, that would be an example. Um, maybe just here I'm going to highlight based on my industry column and say anything that's healthcare, I want to turn it blue, just as a quick example. So if industry equals healthcare, let's make it with a blue background. So hopefully you get the idea in terms of applying conditional formatting. You can do this on tables, pivot tables, gauge charts, and KPIs. So those are the ones that support it today. We're going to be adding conditional formatting for all the other visual types as well on the roadmap. You can still do it for other visual types. Usually you would just add a calculated field and use an if-else statement. And I could say if else it was greater than 20,000, then great, otherwise bad. And I could just put that field on the color on a stack bar chart, for instance, and that would do the same thing. To add filters, you have a filtering panel here. You can add filters that are kind of hidden from the end users this way. So say I needed to filter out and just wanted to show anything where the sales was greater than 100. I could add a filter like that. Or if I just needed to filter by dates and just pick anything from this year, you could do that kind of stuff. But if I want to make a filter that acts as a control where other users can play around with it, we are going to make a filter, but you actually start with by creating a parameter. So for instance, let's do one for our segment column. So I'm going to say create a new parameter, call it segment. The data type is a string. Otherwise, if you want to do one on a date or a number or an integer, you could. This one will be a string. You could choose one value or select multiple values. You can set a static default, so otherwise the default will be all. So I'm just going to create that parameter. Now, it asks, what do you want to do with this parameter? Typically, you're going to want to create a control for it if you want to use it as a filter at least. So I'm going to make this and call it segment. And I could either just give them a box to type it in, or I could give them a drop down, which is more common. And then I could either just specify the values that show up in this drop down. But if it's for a filter, I'm usually going to want to link it to the dataset field itself. So this will make it dynamic in terms of the choices that show up in that drop down. So every time the dataset refreshes, the values in that drop down are going to dynamically update. If I did choose a default for the parameter, then I can check this to hide the all option if I'd like. For a filter, I would rarely do that. That's more if I want to use a parameter, say to allow someone to pick what field they want to use in a visual. You could let someone have like a field picker parameter control. Then having an all option doesn't really make sense. I'm going to give them the choices of on my color or on my x-axis, break it down by segment or industry or category, but all doesn't really make sense. So that's why you would hide that. But for a filter, I'm going to keep it. All right, so now I've got a parameter, I've got a control for it. It's loading the values to populate into the control by querying that field right now. This is just kind of a one-time thing when the data set refreshes. But that control doesn't do anything yet. So the last thing is you need to tell it what you want the control to do. So usually you're going to use this as a filter. You could also use it in a calculated field, but most of the time I'm using it as a filter. So I'm going to filter on that same field, the segment field, and rather than specify the options in the filter, you're going to change it to a custom filter, which gives you this option to say, I want to use a parameter to drive this filter. And this is saying, do you want to just have it filter the one chart you have selected right now, or do you want to change the scope so it affects everything? Usually that's what I want to do, is affect everything, so I'm going to say yes. But all that's doing is changing that up here, the scope. So now I get my area where I can select my segment parameter, and now I'm done. So now based on whatever I select here, everything in this dashboard is going to update. So even my insight, where it's doing my period over period, or if I was adding a forecast here or anomaly detection, all, even the insights are basically just other visual types that the filters can apply to as well. One other kind of neat new feature is this settings button. So in settings, basically everything in QuickSight has always been set to auto fit. So it tries to do a good job of scaling everything for smaller and bigger screens, but some stuff would scale really well and some stuff wouldn't. So I'm making my screen smaller now. So notice the text on titles doesn't change. Some areas of my KPIs don't change size. Inside the visuals, this did resize, but most of the text doesn't resize. So the problem you would come into is maybe if you're designing this on your really nice, beautiful monitor at your desk and everything looks great, you don't have any scroll bars where you don't want them, and then you share this as a dashboard, and other users are looking at it maybe on a small laptop screen, things started to become unreadable. So I like to set this to be optimized now. And usually I just pick this one in the middle, 1366, but you can play around with different options here. It doesn't have to be exactly the same resolution as your screen. It doesn't have to be the same resolution of the iframe you're going to embed this into if you're embedding dashboards. It's just kind of optimizing it for that size. So just pick one that you like what it looks at that setting. So if you do 1920, you're going to get the crispest layout, and you can pack the most data into the screen, but it could be a little bit hard to read on smaller screens. So just play around with them, see which one you think your dashboard looks good at, and set it to that. Now notice when I resize my screen, everything resizes proportionally, including all the text, everything in a visual. So you're guaranteed that everyone's going to get the same experience no matter what screen size they're on. So that's actually a really big improvement, even though it's just a kind of a small button over here. Another item that was in November last year was the concept of themes. So in themes, you can create custom palettes for the data, for the background colors, the spacing in between the visuals. Notice that the spacing in our classic theme, where there's a little bit of a margin in between everything, you can hide those. So I'm just applying one of our default themes here. But what you might do is you can save as on one of these, create your own theme, give it a name. So we can make one that's the corporate standard. And here you can see where I'm changing the background colors and whatnot. And maybe if I want to go with a little bit lighter blue. We're kind of a strong navy blue there. So here you can change the background and the foreground colors. The foreground would be things like text. So this is kind of like a preview here. Here's where you're going to turn on or off some of those spacing. So here are the gutters and the margins. The margins go around the outside and the gutters go between the visuals. So you can turn those off. I like to turn them off, but it's totally up to you, your preference. The borders are the actual lines that are left there. So again, there's a video all about how to customize themes. So we won't go through every single option in here, but this is how you would create a theme. And I gave it a name, calling it our corporate standard. And then these are shareable objects too. So once I have this, I can share it with all the other authors in this account as an example. So either as a group or with individual users, like say I want to share this with the sales management group just as an example. And I can either make them owners where they could edit it or just be able to use it. And then it will show up for others when they go to themes here too. So that's just one of the other slightly newer features in the last 6 months or so, the themes. So say I'm happy with my dashboard here, and now I want to go share it with others. So here's where I would come to my share button. Now, if I want to collaborate on this with somebody else, I would share the analysis with them. The analysis is this object that we're editing right now. So whenever you're creating something new or if you're making changes to something, you're going to do that in the analysis. And then when you're ready to publish more the consumer version of it, that's where you would say you're going to publish a dashboard. So if you had an existing dashboard from this analysis already, you could replace that one. I don't, since this is a new one, so we're going to call this our new dash. You have some advanced options here and here if you'd like to use them. One I like to always check is expanding the controls section by default. If you want to turn off that filtering button so that users can use any controls that you've added, but not go see the other filters you have applied or add new filters based on the data, you could turn off that ad hoc filtering. Um, Other things is you could disable the ability to download data to CSV or drill up and drill down and so on. But usually I'll leave all that stuff turned on. And it's just these few on the top that I'd play around with. So I'm going to go ahead and publish that dashboard. Again, here it's giving me an option to share. So I could share that with our sales management team. And I'm either going to make them a co-owner of it, meaning if they also had access to the analysis, then they could overwrite this dashboard. But usually you're just going to make them viewers of it. And let me just turn that off for now. I'm just going to share it with one of my other users. And Sue is a reader. I think I have another user in here. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share it with those users. And then if that user is an author and not just a reader, or if they're an admin too, an author or an admin, you can optionally give them the save as ability too. So this will allow them to create a new analysis with what you have as a starting point, but it'll be separate from your analysis. So they won't be able to overwrite it or make changes to yours or mess it up, but they can create their own personal version of it. So for power users and people who want to explore, they usually like having that save as capability. So this is just saying if you give them save as, this is also going to give them read access to those data sets that you use there. So that's what that message was. If you're not using an account that's hooked up to Active Directory, then you will see the share with all users in the account as if you'd like to share it with everyone. Otherwise, you share it with either users or groups individually. And then all the interactivity that we had built in earlier, like our filtering here, or the ability to select something in one of these visuals and apply filters via the actions, all of that is available for any readers or any users that you've shared this with. As an owner or a co-owner of the dashboard, you can also schedule email reports to get delivered. So here you're going to choose the schedule at which you want to send the report out. So either just once as a one-off, or every day at 8 in the morning, or just on Mondays at 8 in the morning. So you control the schedule. A little more information like, do you want to change the subject or put more body in the text? Text in the body, I should say. And then of the users who have access to the dashboard, who should receive the email. So as long as you've given them access, then they're eligible to get an email version of it too. So it's basically going to look like a snapshot of the dashboard that gets embedded into the email itself. So I'll see a picture of this dashboard as of when the data was when we ran the email schedule. And then printing, this is also available to any reader. You can print this out to a PDF or print it out to paper if you'd like. Readers are also going to be able to export data out to CSV unless you had turned that off. Even if they apply a sort, then when they export it out to a CSV, all that sorting would be applied still. And the tables, they support pagination. So by default, I think it show you 500 records. You could show up to 10,000 records per page, but you might have much more data even than that. So when you export this data out to CSV, it'll export up to 1 million rows across as many pages as you have. So it's not just what's being shown on that one page, you'll actually get all the data there. And as we can see in this, I asked to sort it by sales. So here, here this is sorted by that same column. It's sorted by sales as well. Here's what I'm saying. All right, so that's a quick walkthrough on some of the authoring capabilities you have in QuickSight. Certainly not an extensive tutorial on every feature, but hopefully get you some inspiration on either adding those actions or adding those controls on the top. We didn't go through examples of adding multiple sheets, but you can have many sheets or tabs within this dashboard and even drill from one sheet to another sheet using what are called URL actions. There's some great other tutorials on using parameters and URL actions and things along those lines and adding those controls. If you just do a search for QuickSight parameters blog, oops, entered that in the wrong area. So if you want to learn more about just interactivity using parameters, this has 4 really good examples of adding controls, having them affect multiple data sets, using them to allow users to pick what fields they want to use in a visual. So you can use parameters to let them pick like what number to show or what dimension to show. And then the last one goes through drilling from one dashboard to another and applying parameters via the URL. So hope this gets you started on the right foot using QuickSight. Thank you for watching and enjoy.